show is a bit different than most. During the most recent 2023 NECA Convention, Tauhira Ali, who is the Executive Director of Industry Innovation at NECA, or the National Electrical Contractors Association, she and I sat down to chat about getting the best out of a convention, thoughts about innovation, podcasting, and of course, a little bit about food. It was fun to catch up with Tauhira and talk through these topics, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. I'm your host, Todd Reed, and welcome to Keeping the Lights On. Let's get into the show.
Our peak right now. For those of you who are listening in, we are literally, like 8 hours, 12 hours, 10 hours into the middle day, the first day of the trade show at the NECA Convention. So we are primed and ready to talk to you about innovation, about conventions, about meeting people, your network, all the things that matter to us and to the industry and why it makes sense to be at a show like this. So Todd, tell me about when you come to a convention or a meeting or conference, what's your strategy?
Well, so specifically my strategy now is I'm looking for guests for the show. Mm-hmm. So when I come here, I had some ideas, like some people I'd want to meet, and I would reach out to those people, to try to meet them. I've met 5 so far today, and while you and Jason were interviewing people, I went out and met some people, so I'm building up that backlog. So it's pretty cool. But what's really great is most of my shows are recorded virtually, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really great to meet people face to face. So when I reach out to them via email or LinkedIn or whatever, they can put the face to the name, and I feel like that gets a little bit better reaction to getting somebody on the show. Now, Gray Bar's goal here is obviously to connect with their customers that they work with on a day-to-day basis, and it's a great opportunity to show contractors our larger picture of Gray Bar and what we do, because they see us on that day-to-day at that in Philly, but they get to see what we're doing in LA. They kind of see a broader picture of what Gray Bar does, so that's good for us to do that, and they get to meet leadership from Gray Bar, which I think helps the relationship. So that's kind of ours. How about yours?
Well, it's funny because you bring up a good point for you and me. What's our company's goals versus our goals? And that, I think, for anyone who's listening, I think that's a really great nuance to think about is what are the goals that bring you to convention and what are the goals that bring your company here? And Todd, to your point, a company like Gray Bar is coming to meet customers, to share their messaging. And for those of you who are listening from vendors and solutions providers, software and hardware in the construction industry or any industry, that's absolutely why you come, is to put names to faces and build those relationships with your customers. For a company like NECA, in this case, NECA, this is our home. This is our family. It's a great family reunion. And for me personally, I come for 2 reasons, whether it's a show that I'm putting on or a show that I'm attending. I come to learn, and I come to connect. And when I say connect, I truly mean with the vendors, with the people, with the network. For so long, for over 2 years, we were virtual. Mm-hmm. And we were screens, and we were, looking at everybody from the shoulder up. It's a good way to remember that you're not, as someone put it, you're not crazy, you're not in isolation. You're going through these challenges together, and you get to brainstorm together, and you come to conclusions together. So that's, I think, the best part and the coolest part about being at a convention like this. It's funny because Todd and I are usually behind the mic. And for those of you who listen to Innovation Overload or who listen to Keeping the Lights On, you usually hear us ask our guests, what's your favorite restaurant? What's your favorite eatery? What's your favorite place to go? And also, what's your background? So I usually ask people what their background is and what innovation means to them. And instead, what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to tell you guys my background, and I'm going to tell you what I think innovation means. And Todd usually asks people what their favorite restaurant is. And so after I go, I'm going to have you share your favorite restaurant, because it's time the world knows where Todd Reed likes to eat. Actually, I'm going to start with you. Todd, tell us about your restaurant.
All right, so I definitely have thought through this, because whenever you ask someone a question, you should have that same question. So,
right.
So right now, and I'm not really a big foodie person, but I love going to really nice places. And someone invited my wife and I last year and then this year, so I've now gone twice. And both experiences were top notch. So I'm in the St. Louis area, and it's called Brasserie, like BRASS Erie or something like that. Brasserie by niche. So there's a few restaurants that they have, but Brasserie is just, I don't even know what kind of, it's just good American, but kind of European, probably influenced menu. But just, you can tell that the servers there are professional, because I think I saw many of the same servers there 1 year later. Like, I don't go there all the time. I went there last year and then this year. And so when you see that, that says something about the place. The Niche Group does a lot of really great restaurants in St. Louis area, but just fantastic food. And I think it was a lemon basil chicken is what I got there that I really liked. I actually tried their burger to see what it was like, and it was a very good burger, but that lemon basil chicken that I got last year, I mean, I could still remember it. Of course, I got a dessert there. I couldn't tell you what I got, but just amazing food. They care about what they're doing, and that's always, you can tell they care about the ingredients and the way they present. So.
Oh, so it's a bit of a when you're here, your family sort of a deal.
Yeah, no, you feel like they know you, even though I've only been there twice.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And so to share my background, I started in engineering and computer science. So my goal was to build machines and make them smarter. And the irony there is that I was actually a very poor math and science student. So I struggled through school. And what that taught me really tenacity more than anything else, is how can I continue to grow, and how can I continue to do things that are hard, do scary things. And so it's been really cool to kind of turn that into a career, or the first chapter of my career. So I first started with robots and machines. And so I worked in R&D for many, many years. And I worked on some of the first AI and machine learning types of things in aerospace and automotive industry, and even manufacturing. And from there, I fell in love with this little industry, one of the oldest in the world if you ask James Benham, construction. And so I've been in the construction industry a little over 10 years now, and it's just been just an incredible way to advocate for our people and our culture and our community. And so that's kind of how I got here. And then on top of that, what innovation means to me, honestly, innovation is change. It's about growing, and it's about challenging yourself to be better and to be a little bit different than you were the day before, and a little bit more towards the goals of where you want to be tomorrow. And I would say, after asking that question to hundreds of people, that's probably what I would say sums up the best of their answers. And what's innovation if not growing off of the answers of other people? Yeah,
no doubt. So did you, did you get a degree in engineering? Is that your...
I have 2 degrees in mechanical engineering and computer science.
Okay, so when you got an engineering degree, and you're more, so to me, that you're more on the business side, like you're not doing engineering problems right now, right? You're not working on those things. So did you see yourself going to that? Like when you were in school, did you think someday I'm going to be kind of more on the business side, helping people innovate? Was that even in your mind?
Absolutely not. So when I was in school, I worked in manufacturing. So I worked on robots, and I worked on kind of designing like mechatronics, like the solutions to make, buildings smarter and robots smarter, machines smarter. And then I spent about almost 10 years designing power tools. And that was after my graduate work, which was programming. So I spent a lot of time in clean rooms, in sterile labs, and the work I did, honestly, most of the work I did was things that would be like 10, 15 years out. So the cutting edge of the industry. And what I found in construction is that it gave me this opportunity to work on things that would make it onto job sites today and help people today. And it's funny, I joke around a lot about how I am the daughter of a teacher, because I never planned to be a teacher or an instructor or be on this thought leadership side, but I guess you don't escape your destiny.
Right, interesting, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I just interviewed someone, and she thought she was going to go into teaching, I guess traditional high school or middle school or something, and she went down some completely different road for CommScope, I think is who she was with, but now she teaches. Like that's her job, and she's like, that's interesting how things come around to that. So yeah, that's a great answer. Thanks. My kid just graduated in mechanical engineering and is in battery research design. So it's not something you think about in the mechanical side, but it works out, and he's pursuing his PhD, but who knows where he'll be in 10, 20 years. Like, what's he going to be doing with that degree?
Absolutely, and that's another thing is I was a mechanical engineer because at first I was thinking about going into like prosthetics and biomedical engineering. And you could do that from biomedical engineering or from mechanical engineering. And then I was thinking about going into like airplanes and aerospace engineering, and I realized you could do that from aerospace or you could do it from mechanical. So really the cool thing is mechanical engineering is the workhorse of engineering. It's the generalist that allows you to become specific in any way. Kind of like construction is this workhorse of, of society, really, because what you're doing is you're building the foundations. You're building the electronics, the mechatronics, the HVAC, the mechanicals, the electrical that drives our community, which is what's really cool about it. We talked about convention strategy, and I think for our listeners out there, I want to go back to that a little bit because you brought up something really cool about, when this is over, you would want to stick around or come back another time and really get to know the town. And there's something really powerful about thinking about not just your goals when you get to a convention, but also what are your goals prior to? Like, how do you prepare beforehand? What do you do during? And what do you do afterwards, right? Other than, I think we had a guest earlier who said, what I do after I go home from conventions or meetings is I scramble to catch up for the week of work I lost.
Right.
So Todd, what is your kind of before, during, and after advice for our listeners?
Well, I'd say definitely take a look at, kind of plan your schedule out. Like, I'm also thinking about conventions I go to that are kind of more on the hobby side, and you just have a much more fun time and when you plan it. I know it doesn't sound fun, but it is better if you plan it out because, especially at a NECA show or a show like NECA's size, there's so many speakers, so many classes, and how many booths are there? I mean, 100?
Oh, hundreds, yeah.
And so you can see them all, but what's going to make you happiest and get you the most productive? So I would say go through the exhibitor list and see who's going to be there and who you really want to make sure you stop and see, and really just have some goals in mind. Again, my most productive ones are when I have an idea, like I want to meet Tauhira. So how do I do that?
Here I am.
Oh, you're right there. So done. Mission accomplished. Done. So having that plan, and then that is the dangerous part is you get back, you're tired, you've traveled, and you got to catch up. Here we're missing a weekend, so you got to kind of catch up on your personal stuff. And it's real easy to be like 2 months later, like, oh, I didn't reach out to, which I've done before.
Everything's left in a bag in a pile.
What was her name I met? And I don't remember Tauhira, but I can't forget Tauhira. She's, can't
unforgettable.
But you do forget, or you just don't reach out, and then it's 2 months, and then you just don't do it. So I think it's pretty important to also have that plan of, depending on how many people you're meeting, like reach out to them with a plan of reaching out over the next few weeks and just, hey, we talked, In my case, I'm just going to even though I may not interview someone for a couple months, I need to reach out to them and say, hey, we talked, thanks for that. Let's continue the conversation, even if it's via email. So that's kind of my goal.
Todd, I would say you're absolutely right, especially that things you come back and you're trying to catch up and then you lose them. It's by the wayside, right? So there's definitely something to that. My goal, and it's funny because not a lot of people know this about me or believe this about me, but I'm actually a pretty introverted person. And
me too, actually.
And ironically, here we sit as podcast hosts. And so for me, I know myself, and I know that going to any sort of meeting, the best part is going to be connecting with people. That's also going to be the most draining. And so one of the things that I always do is I always try to overplan, almost down to the in the morning I'm going to do this, in the afternoon I'm going to do this, in the evening I'm going to do this. Because what it allows future me to be able to say, hey, you know what? At noon today, I'm actually pretty tired. I don't have the mental capacity to think of what I'm going to do, but if I have a list of my options or I've gone through and I've bookmarked what I think might be interesting, maybe I've been networking and maybe I just want to sit down and listen to someone tell me about drones or tell me about the latest in electric vehicle charging. And then maybe I sit and I do that for a little bit and then I'm like, okay, but I'm ready. I miss people again. I'm going to go to the Songbird Cafe and I'm going to go sit and grab a drink and listen to music while I network and see who I can meet and see how their experience has been. So I think that's a really cool thing, is to be able to have kind of different phases of your day blocked out, but not be so rigid about it that you can't be flexible. Maybe this has been a great experience, but I got to go sit in my room and eat a pretzel to kind of recover a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say about kind of that before and then the during. And then the after, I absolutely agree with you. I think there's such a big important piece about following up, and whether it's an email or you drop someone a line on LinkedIn or whether you reach out some other way, just making sure that you have those connections. And also, for those of you who go to conventions who are listening, paying it forward. Bringing, it's always really cool when you can take something home and give it to someone else and say, hey, I met this person, I made this contact for you. Because not all of us get a chance to go to every show or get to go to every event. So what can you take home or bring back to the people who you missed?
Yeah, that is great. I do. So we have a product management side of our business, and I used to. I haven't done it in the last couple of years, but I used to really focus on that too, to take names back to them and contacts. Hey, I do have a question about the show that you do.
Yes.
Innovation Overload. Now this is more for my, because I'm going to take this as an episode and share it on my channel.
Uh-huh.
So can we get to that? Can I kind of talk to you a little bit about Innovation Overload? So I have an interview with Tauhira, but we talked more about innovation and kind of what she does with NECA and all that. But here, I didn't really talk a whole lot about the show except for to, ask about it briefly. But kind of what is Innovation Overload? Obviously talking about innovation. What do you want to get out of it? What is the goal of the show?
Well, that is a great question. So Innovation Overload, what I love about the show, and to your point about podcasting, is it's all about sharing other people's stories. So it is actually a great thing for a natural introvert because you get to hear and create space for somebody else to shine. Mm-hmm. And what I love about Innovation Overload especially is we bring on a lot of contractors, we bring a lot of industry experts, whether they're vendors or inventors or scientists or whatever they are, and they're sharing what innovation looks like to them, which to our point is always slightly different. And then they share some of their triumphs, their not necessarily failures is a bad thing, but their hiccups along the way, and then their best piece of advice for anyone out there who may be going on a similar journey. And so it's a really great way to kind of do a little bit of whether it's on your commute or you're just sitting back and listening in your house, get a little bit of a slice of someone really sharing some of their candid experiences. So Innovation Overload actually started at NECA 2020 Live. So it started at the 2020 NECA Convention, which was virtual during the pandemic. And that was when the podcast got launched. And I was a part of launching it, but it was actually the brainchild of Mr. Josh Bone and Amanda Harbison, and Lonnie Compton from the NECA team at the time. So they started the podcast as a way to kind of connect with NECA listeners, both virtually on, during the convention, but also to create something in perpetuity. And it has evolved, and it's become this really great experience. And Todd, I was actually just, you and I were talking about this. So the Innovation Overload podcast is actually, by listens, it's ranked as one of the top 10% of podcasts in the world.
Whoa, great.
So we have a global audience of people who are coming to check out what
that's fantastic.
Leaders in electrical construction are doing.
Yeah, that's great. I need to learn a few things. I'm not quite there yet, but we just started this year. So what have you, I think you might have touched on this, but what have you enjoyed about it? Like, what do you like about doing it?
I think the best part about doing it, honestly, is giving people a platform to share their stories. And at the end of the day, when you can give someone a place to feel heard, that's amazing. But when that person who's being heard makes a difference in somebody else's life and somebody else's journey, then that's the lightning in the pan. So I'll give you an example. So we're here at the NECA show. There's, it's me, Todd, and about 10,000 of our closest friends. And last night we were at the opening ceremony, the opening party, and I ran into someone who's been on Innovation Overload, who's been on the podcast. And he and I were talking, and we were talking with his coworkers, and we were talking about an episode that we had done, probably like 2.5 years ago. And in the episode, we brought on this contractor as a guest, and I was asking about prefab, I was asking about lean construction and just in time and distributed work. And every question I asked was met with about a 2-word answer. So every question I asked, it was like pulling teeth. And you could tell that this person would answer my questions, but they weren't excited. So then finally at some point we got on the subject of internships and we got on the subject of recruiting, and all of a sudden they bloomed. And so the question, once we got on talent and recruiting and internships, they absolutely blossomed, and they were telling me about how they recruit, what they do to recruit, how they started their internship program, how it's brought people in. And it was a whole blossoming. And this wasn't even, what I thought I brought this person on the podcast for. And what was great about it is we both got this connection, and we both felt really, really awesome about this powerful story. And since then, since 2.5 years ago when we recorded that, I've had no less than 3 or 4 people call me and say, I heard that podcast with, this person, with this contractor, and that's what inspired me to start up an internship program at my company.
Oh, wow.
So, people have literally changed their business strategy because of what they heard or saw at the podcast, which is an incredible thing to see and hear. And it just goes to show you that, to your point about always having a recorder on, inspiration can strike in so many places. So again, for our listeners, maybe this is your sign to go, send me a message and I'll link you to that podcast so you can start your own recruiting program. But also think about when you hear things, how does it apply to you and your business, and how can you change the way you build your strategies and your approach to life because of what you're hearing. I'd love to hear how your experiences have been and in the history of keeping the lights on. And I most importantly want to hear where did this phrase of keeping the lights on come from? So origin story of the name and the podcast.
All right, so the name was a process of just coming up with like 20, 30, 40 names, and like what's going to cover we're a very broad topic, right? We're talking about all the constituents. If it was like a construction-focused one, it'd probably be easier to make a title, right?
Yeah.
But we are talking to all constituents that we work with, from our employees to associations to contractors to universities, municipalities, and the manufacturers we work with. So it was just like, what are we trying to do? It's like, well, everyone's trying to keep the lights on and keep it. Now I know, well, we're trying to do more than keep the lights on, but we're trying to keep the lights on. That's what we're doing. We're trying to run our business. We're trying to keep it, stay open for business. And what does it take to do that? So that's kind of where the name comes from. But the reason I wanted to do this show is, one, I'd done a podcast. I love podcasting. I think it's a great avenue of getting to know people and opening up doors for conversations. But I wanted to say, like, almost everyone we work with works with each other. Like a contractor will go to I'll just keep using university. A contractor works for a university to put the new building in, to maintain their facility, to renovate their facility. But we work with the university, and we also work with the contractor. We work with the municipality. We work with so we work with all those people, and those people are working with all those people. But do we always talk to each other from a bigger picture? Like, so my hope is, my ideal hope is that a contractor will talk about an issue that they're working with. Say it's prefab, and they're talking about their challenges and why they're doing it. And I try to come up with a question of like, well, why would a university care about that, or your end user customer? And hopefully there are ideas. And so if a university plant manager's listening, they can be like, oh, I didn't know contractors view it that way. And so when I'm working with my contractor, I now know that. So I'm hoping to kind of open up eyes on, and the same for contractors, manufacturers, open up eyes about, that's why people think the way they do. That's why they ask me the questions they do. My ideal world is just opening up lines of communication and sharing ideas. Like, we're struggling with this, not sure how to solve it, and someone else from outside the industry might hear, like, well, here's how we solved it. So that's kind of what that's the goal.
I love that. And it's true, you're building bridges and you're opening up those lines of communication. And why would anyone tune into a podcast? Why do we have the listeners we have listening if they weren't trying to facilitate and create ideas and create opportunities? So we have just a few minutes left. So I'm gonna lightning round this for us. Todd, I always ask our guests, what is the one piece of advice they want to leave everybody with? One piece of advice, and we've given a lot of our own personal experiences and advice here. But if you could wrap things up and put it into that last conclusion that you want to leave our listeners when they hang up the phone or they get off the podcast, what do you wish that they knew or wish that you wanted to share with them? No pressure or anything.
Well, no, I mean,
you could put it back at me afterwards.
When you asked me about advice, I mean, I just think about the best advice ever. I mean, anyway, the best advice given to me, and it was by someone at Gray Bar who was retiring, and he and I would, so he was one of our product managers, so he would have the relationship with the product people, and he, had all these contacts. So he would bring them in, and then he would bring me into the meeting to talk about whatever subject I was working on. Well, he told me one time, he goes, Todd, and I'm again, introvert, I'm kind of reserved. I always kind of like to get a feel for like what kind of person is Tauhira, and kind of understand who you are before I would, be myself.
Engage, yeah.
Before I engage. I mean, I would talk, obviously, but I would just kind of say what I think I need to say. He told me, be yourself sooner. He goes, you're an engaging person, you have good questions, you have good ideas, and you have good energy about you. You need to be yourself sooner and don't be, I mean, frankly, it was insecurity a little bit that was holding me back too, right? I was just like, I don't know, will this person like me? I mean, we could get into all that. I have a therapist for that. I could sit down and, start talking about that now. And so that was the best piece of advice I ever had. Be yourself sooner. So I try to do that whenever I can. And I would encourage you, if you're out there, be who you are, be you sooner.
I love that. And it's funny because whenever we promote our podcast, for those who are active listeners for Innovation Overload, we always try to find a quote from the guests. And we came into this, Todd, you and I, thinking that we were going to talk only and primarily about the trade show and about convention. And it's funny because the idea of being yourself sooner is possibly some of the best advice I've ever heard. So you nailed it. You knocked it out of the park. So
do you have another thing, advice you would want to give or share? Or?
I would say mine is do the scary thing. Mm-hmm. Which is not too dissimilar from yours.
No, it's
right?
very similar. Very similar.
Yeah, it's very similar. I have found in my life there's always an easy path that can be taken. There's always something that you can do that is, less risky, and you're fine if you do. But when you do the scary thing, when you push yourself out into an area that you may not necessarily comfortably think would be where you'd be good or where you'd be brave or where you'd do a good job, that's always what gives you those huge dividends. And whether or not it achieves or it gets to the point that you thought it would, or whether or not it's something that maybe doesn't work out exactly as you were hoping, it's just really, really powerful that you did it, that you know that you had an easy route and a scary route, and you picked the scary one. So that's kind of the nice thing there.
Great.
Awesome. Well, I think we're about ready to wrap up. So again, if you want to reach Todd, if you want to reach Keeping the Lights On, Todd, where do they go to find you?
Well, we're on all the major platforms, just like you. So you can go and see Keeping the Lights On. You can see the logo right here. So when you type in Apple or Spotify, you'll see that. I'm also on LinkedIn, Todd Reed. But also you can find us at graybar.com/podcast. And we're the only one we have right now, so it'll be pop up. And we're also just posted my first YouTube video of an interview, so that's now going. So you can see me actually interviewing Jennifer Roback from CommScope, and that's great. So Awesome. And if anyone is looking for Innovation Overload, again, we're on all the major podcast platforms. You can also find us on the NECA website, so necanet.org. And also, if you are looking to reach me or anyone on the innovation team or any of our guests, or even if for whatever reason you want to go through me to reach Todd, innovation@necanet.org. So we are here to answer your questions and your comments. And again, thank you for tuning in, and thank you for sharing this journey with us. Thanks.
That was my conversation with Tauhira Ali, Executive Director of Industry Innovation at NECA. You can connect with Tauhira and what she is working on by heading to the links in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, you can help us grow this show by subscribing and leaving a 5-star rating in your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Keeping the Lights On. We'll see you next time.